Aloha, my name is Brett Christensen, and today we are going to talk about the real estate closing process. So now whether you're a seller or a buyer, then this video will guide you through the essential steps and just milestones involved in finalizing a real estate transaction. We are going to skip basically the whole first half of the whole transaction process. So I'm just going to assume that you've already gotten past your inspection period, going over disclosures, and that might include the title report, easements, and really we're talking about both parties ready to close the deal. All that stuff's behind you. Now you're just both looking at that finish line and trying to get this deal closed. So now if it's a finance buyer, then usually about 10 days before the closing date, both parties, the sellers and the buyers, will receive a copy of the conditional loan approval. Now on this will be things such as a buyer needs to get their insurance binder, or they might need to submit additional financial statements. Then they need to get the actual final loan approval. There'll be a short list, hopefully, of things they need to do in order to close the deal. The buyer initially will get that conditional loan approval, but they do need to share that with the seller per the contract. Now for cash buyers, obviously they're not getting loan approval, but they also, around this time in the deal are going to want to look at getting things in motion to get their funds liquid and ready to transfer. Often that means they need to sell stocks, bonds. Sometimes they're even selling another property. So whatever needs to happen, then that needs to start happening because the clock is ticking. Now, also at this stage of the game, most contracts will have an automatic right to extend, depends on how it's written, but it's very common that we see between a 10 and 14 day extension written into a contract. Now, if things start to get bumpy, let's say the mortgage broker needs more time, they might ask for more time, or let's say they are trying to sell another house, they might need more time for that deal to close. So this is around the time agents start talking about, hey, I just want to let you know, we're going to activate this extension and utilize that. So now the next thing we're going to talk about is preparing for the final walkthrough. Now we conduct a final walkthrough, do a final inspection, just to ensure the property is in the expected condition. Now, this is an opportunity to inspect for any repairs that were agreed to or anything else such as cleaning or removing items. For the buyer, it can be very helpful if you bring a list of what was agreed upon. So once you're there on the property, you don't get distracted, and otherwise often you just forget some of the things. So bring that list. For sellers, this can be a very stressful part of the process if they miscalculate their timing. Now, moving out of a house, as I'm sure you know, can take much longer than you expect. And I've definitely seen before when you show up to inspect a property and it's very obvious that the seller ran out of time. The house usually isn't going to be clean like you expect. There might still be stuff there. There might still be everything there. It's hard to say, but it does happen. If anything is found during that final walkthrough, agents will usually get involved and figure something out to keep things moving forward. Often that might mean a credit of some kind, so professionals can be brought in to finish the job. But really the goal is to get the buyer to sign a final walkthrough approval, and then they'll deliver that to escrow saying that they're all good with the condition of the home and ready to move forward. If any contingencies still haven't been signed off or still open, those will be signed on and taken care of. And once the house has been signed off on, all contingencies are gone and the final loan approval has come in. So now we're at the final stage when a buyer and seller go to escrow, or escrow comes to them with a mobile notary. That's not uncommon. Sometimes if it's out of state, then they try to time it so they have time to actually ship the wet signature documents, because you can't just do these digitally. So escrow is a neutral third party in this process. So that's a service they provide. They hold the funds. They also collect the necessary documents during the closing process, make sure everything is in place. And at this stage, if both parties have reviewed and they sign these different legal documents, including loan documents, transfer of ownership paperwork, once all that's packaged together, and funds have been confirmed or in the account, the escrow officer facilitates the transfer of funds and legal ownership, ensuring a very smooth and secure transaction for both the buyer and seller. at the same time, you actually want to start the transferring of utilities process. Even before the deal has closed, you got to give the utility companies a heads up on what's going on. So when you're closing a new house, transferring these utilities is absolutely paramount. I've heard of people buying houses and they show up and there's no power. So both the seller and the buyer need to notify the providers and notify them about the changes, possibly schedule disconnects and reconnects. They might have to read the meters. They got to set up new accounts, cancel services. There's all kinds of stuff that needs to happen. So you want to get ahead of the game and do it ahead of time. Don't wait till the last day. So this, of course, will ensure a smooth transition. So you have water and power in your new home and you can enjoy it on day one. Sometimes what happens is people don't pay attention to holidays or weekends and they think they're all good and they're really not. So stay on top of that. Now we're going to talk about the transferring of funds. Now, if you're getting a loan, the bank basically takes care of all this stuff. You don't have to worry about it so much. If you're paying with cash, it's a little bit more involved. So let's just talk about this. So the closing funds are typically wired to the escrow account. This ensures a smooth and secure transfer of these funds. In a real estate transaction, the process of funds maturing refers to the time it takes for funds to become available and ready to use in the transaction. It's not like a snap of a finger. You would think it would be like that fast, but it's not. This typically occurs when a buyer needs to transfer funds from their bank accounts to complete the purchase. So to ensure a smooth real estate transaction and avoid any potential delays, it's very important to plan and consider the time it will take to do this. Buyers should communicate with their banks or financial institution to understand the specific processing times for this transfer. And it's really advisable to initiate the transfer way in advance of the closing date, just to allow sufficient time for funds to mature and be available for the transaction. Now, in Hawaii, there is a time cutoff on the mainland banks. I believe it's around 11 a.m. or noon. They have to wire that money by that time for it to reach here in time because of the time difference. We're 3 hours ahead of California, and then the other banks, East Coast, depends on where the money's coming from, but you definitely got to check on the times. You might lose a day. It does happen. So now just a warning, a fraud warning. Wire fraud has happened, so you got to make sure you received your instructions from the correct party. These frauds have happened in Hawaii. They've actually happened in all 50 states. And basically the way it works is these fraudsters will hack into, let's say, a title company or lender email server and their computer system, and they actually are able to see the up and coming real estate closings. And then the fraudster emails the buyer or even the bank with bogus wire transfer instructions related to that particular real estate closing. And so it's recommended that you also actually call your escrow officer and verify your wire transfer instructions. They are, because this has happened, they are very careful about this stuff, and there are procedures in place to prevent this from happening, but still be on the lookout for anything weird. So that's the end of your warning. You've been warned. Okay, guys, we are almost at the end here. Thanks for staying with me. So we're down to the very end of the property closing and transfer. So once all of your paperwork is in, all the money is in, everything is in order, the property transfer can take place and becomes official upon recording at the Bureau of Conveyances. This marking the completion of the transaction. In Hawaii, typically the deal will close 3 days from when all the paperwork is completed and 2 days from when the funds have been deposited. The transfer becomes official when the Bureau opens. I believe it's at 8:30 a.m. and we almost always get a call from escrow right at that time. 8:30 a.m. we get that phone call, the deal is closed, and we're done. So that's the exciting moment when you can go to your new place, keys get dropped in your hands, and you are the owner of a new home. So that's it. Thanks for staying with me. I hope this answered any questions you have. In conclusion, understanding this process is essential to just having a smooth, stress-free transaction. By following these steps and working closely with your real estate agent, there are probably going to be some bumps in the road, and I hope you've got a great agent to bring you through that process. So thanks again for watching. My name is Brett Christensen with Maui Property. If you are looking for real estate, you can go check out our website at mauiproperty.com, which is on the screen behind you. And if you have any specific questions or need guidance on your own transaction, either consult with your real estate agent or if you don't have an agent yet, we'd be happy to help you. So please reach out, and our information should be back up on the screen. You have a great day. Thank you so much. Aloha.